Hey everyone. So when I first looked at the Garden Tower 2 and did some research, I was a little bit skeptical, I'll admit, in the beginning, primarily due to the worms that are going to be in the system. And part of my concern at the time when I was doing this research was because, when it rains outside, you see worms coming out of the ground, you sometimes see them on the sidewalk, etc. So I thought, man, when I'm watering this tower, how are the worms going to survive? I have a vermicompost bin already. I've shown it in my other videos, which I have the hungry bin. And so I'm very comfortable with worms, but I'm also not watering my bin like I do with my plants. So I thought I would show an update kind of showing how the worms have been doing. And to my surprise, they've been doing actually very well. And I've actually even learned a few things about them. So why don't we get started? Now, just as a recap, I've had this tower now for about, I would say 7-8 months now. It is a little bare because I lost quite a bit of plants up here in the main section, which I will be adding back fairly soon. But let me just kind of show you. If you've seen my worm setup video, you'll see that this middle tower was actually quite high, like maybe up to here. So it's actually definitely compressed a bit. And part of that, my hunch is, of course, compressing of the material. But two, I think the worms are actually going through and eating it, which is why that you see it there. Now let's see if we can dig down a little bit and see if we can find any worms here. Usually there are some, so I thought I would try and dig through and try and see if I can show you. Now, what's crazy about this tower is that even though I started with red wigglers, I have noticed that I find worms all over the place. Oh, there's one right there. There's definitely not going to be as many compared to, there's one worm. There's definitely not going to be as many compared to my my hungry bin, because that one had started with over 2,000 worms. This one only started with maybe 100 or two. There looks like to be a second worm right there. If I go in here, we should see some more worms down here too, if I could find any. Okay, you can see there's some movement down there as well, a couple of worms in there. So what I'm trying to show is that they truly are all over the place. We've had some rain, so this whole tower has been wet for quite some time. I don't have any right now, but I even have found some all the way at the bottom right here. And this is where additional water will collect if you overwater it. I've even found worms in here. I've found them the following day, so I don't know how long they've been inside the bin, but they survived in the water as well. So I learned that, while it's obviously not their ideal environment, they can survive in the water for some time, of course, as long as it's oxygenated. Hopefully don't keep them there too long. I then will dump them in the top and let them go around. So I'm going to try and empty this bottom section really quick. This is usually when you're harvesting your compost, but let's see if I just do a quick release, if we can find any worms down here. There's definitely, oh, there we go, wow. There is definitely a worm right there. So just showing you, of course there's going to be more up top, because red wigglers tend to like being up top, but there are also, I'm just going to dump it in here on the top for now. There are also worms that do go lower. Now, another thing that you might want to consider is mixing up the breeds of worms that you have. This one looks quite big, so it actually might be a European nightcrawler. And these worms tend to tend to go deeper. So it might be a good idea to have, a little bit of a mixture of red wigglers and European night crawlers so that your whole tower is, covered, or actually your worms are traversing through the top and the bottom. Because my hunch is, there's gonna be more at the top layer for the red wigglers because that's kind of where they traditionally like to be at versus the lower levels. So hopefully that helps right there, just kind of showing, the worms are doing well, even with rain, even with, watering the plants. We saw them at the top. We saw them at the bottom when I just took them out from the compost tray. And while I didn't have anything to show today, but I, sharing from my personal experiences, I've even seen some in the watering bin, fully submerged in water and still alive and doing well. The last thing I like to mention is that while I've enjoyed composting through the chute here, I've actually also enjoyed composting in this top layer. And the reasoning is because normally when I compost, the growth, I usually don't care, right? When I'm composting in a tumbler or composting in my vermicompost bin, I usually don't care about growth. But sometimes when I try to compost something, it actually just continues to grow. And for me, as a gardener, actually just a hobbyist, it's actually kind of fun just seeing things kind of just grow. So I've actually been enjoying composting in this top layer as well, which is perfectly fine for the worms. And if something grows, awesome. And if it doesn't, it'll just get composted anyways. So hopefully that helps. As you can see, that worm that we found at the bottom is now gonna start bearing again. But hopefully this helps. If you're on the fence or wondering about the worms as part of the garden tower too, you can kind of see from this update that they do thrive pretty well in this system. And hopefully I'll provide more updates as I find them. All right, thanks everyone.